The last 24 hours brought us news that cricket had lost one of its true greats. Bob Willis, fast bowler and verdict giver, former England captain and still his country's fourth highest wicket taker in tests. Hero of Headingley and cult hero of Sky Sports cricket coverage. Butch, you knew him well, worked with him at Sky. These are bleak midwinter tidings indeed.
Yes, mate, they are. I was devastated to hear the news yesterday. And it kind of didn't seem very real then, but it's the reality of it has come crashing down on me this morning, and I'm pretty upset about it. He was just a great guy, really was. When as a player, in the days before I had any real knowledge of him as the man, he was kind of terrifying. The idea that you would get any sort of quarter out of him or any sort of praise out of him was something that almost would spur you on. The idea that you were more than likely being rinsed by him was something else that was always highly likely. I remember the first time I sort of had anything really to do with him was on a tour of Bangladesh, actually, and we were in Chittagong, and as you know, we all know that sort of the Sky Sports guys, plus some of the players back in those days, we all liked to have a beverage or two, and there kind of wasn't anywhere to do that in the Gong, and so I was a little bit miserable. And I can remember just briefly having a conversation with Bob as somebody was coming in to the hotel. A runner was coming into the hotel with brown paper bags, which probably had liquor of some type in them, and he and I sort of exchanged a bit of a moment and a joke. And sort of from that moment on, I warmed to the idea of Bob Willis. And then, of course, much later on, as I started to be more in television studios than on the cricket field, I obviously started to know him extremely well. First of all, as a broadcaster, I'd kind of sit there in awe and listen to his opening monologues. Really, I mean, that was kind of one of the things. You don't get a lot of teaching, a lot of tuition when it comes to getting behind the microphone, which might not come as a surprise to anybody, but some people might be shocked to hear that. And so it was very much a question of sitting there and listening and learning, keeping your eyes and ears open. And Bobby would always, if he was on first comms, which would be his natural, the natural spot, sort of bringing everybody up to date with the story, introducing the game, the teams, the match situation, the importance of or lack of importance of the game. And so, you'd sit there in the colour commentator's chair and just watch and listen to the way he set the whole thing up. And it was peerless. And you'd kind of, again, a little bit like when I was playing, initially you'd kind of be terrified to pick the microphone up off the desk because you just think, I don't want to get in the way, and I don't want him to glare at me. I don't want him to scowl at me. But all of that was his way of kind of giving you the education that you needed without him sort of sitting there and going, right, now walking you through the whole thing. And then as things progressed, he is just the funniest, warmest, most generous, most interesting, bloke that I've ever met, that I've worked with. And this from somebody that the public perception of whom would be of a sort of a miserable, dour old sod who kind of spends the whole day howling at the clouds, which couldn't be further from the truth. And so it's dreadfully sad, and I'm I don't know. Tomorrow will be a different way of looking at it, I'm sure, but today I'm a bit sore.
Miller, you've written that you already knew who Willis was before cricket had begun to take root in your consciousness.
Absolutely. I mean, it was as I wrote in the piece last night, it was the formative memories of Bob Willis. Obviously, his career finished before I was old enough to know of him, but somewhere along the line before I really understood cricket, I had seen highlights of Headingley 81. I'd seen that vicious delivery to Trevor Chappell that just rears at his gloves. That somehow he achieved vertical takeoff with his deliveries in that spell. He was the fastest, meanest bowler that England produced. in my lifetime, before my lifetime. I think Ian Botham said he was the only great fast bowler that England produced in his career, and he was the only counterpoint that England had to a great era of fast bowling. I mean, you bear in mind, around that time, obviously the West Indies mean machine was ramping up. You got Lillian Thompson in Australia. Later on, you got the Pakistanis coming through with Wasim and co. And in the middle of this, here's Bob Willis, basically this lone ranger. And his numbers, as Butch alluded to, I mean, 325 wickets in 90 tests. I mean, this day and age, we've got a fair few players who've gone beyond 100. I mean, James Anderson, 145 and counting. But in that day and age, I mean, I remember how extraordinary it was when players reached 400 wickets. You got Lilly and Kapil Dev got to 400. But, for a long time, 300 was just out of this world. Just it was hard to believe that any player could last that long, particularly a guy who in 1975 had to have operations on both of his knees. I mean, it's said that he carried on bowling. He was barely ever out of pain as a fast bowler for the rest of his career. I mean, he was, as you can see from his run-up, he was tall, gangly. He wasn't a natural athlete, but my God, he kept galloping in. It was an inspirational, I mean, as I say, my entire memory of his career is only from rain delay footage on BBC and latterly on YouTube, but I'm fully immersed in the legend of Bob Willis, and that legend was fully formed in my brain by the time I realised that cricket was the greatest sport on earth.
I'm guessing that there have been a million words written already, and there will be even more, because he kind of just he was so multifaceted, Bob. We can go on about his cricket, about his bowling, but there were just so many other things to him. And I think I said it on Sky last night, that one of the greatest things about him was that he was not only was he interesting, but he was interested. He'd kind of take time to ask questions and to listen and to try and find out about everything that he could. Whether it be politics, whether it be other sports happening in other sides of the world, literature, music, art, all that kind of stuff. He kind of, the whole thing was of great interest and beauty to him. So,
and wine as well.
Missed. Wine, of course.
He had his own wine label.
Yes.
I sampled it once at Christmas. It was a very, very good tipple. A bottle of both the Merrill Willis. It was glorious. But on that note, I mean, it was probably one of the iconic moments of his sort of rapprochement with the England dressing room was 2015 when, as Butch mentions, that this sort of slight scary standoffishness that the England players had, but Andrew Strauss instigated a series of meetings to try and get the team to meet the commentators, recognise that they're all in the same camp, all play for England, all passionate, etc. And it just so happened on the eve of the Trent Bridge Test in 2015. It was the turn of the England fast bowlers to go and meet Bob Willis and have dinner. And as legend has it, Stuart Broad was the only person who sampled the wine that night, because the rest of them were trying to be on good behaviour and ready for the test. And obviously, following morning, 8 for 15. Something worked in that. And of course, by the end of that test, I think you were in the studio, weren't you?
Yeah.
When Joe Root wore his Einstein mask and started ripping off Bob Willis, it was that was a clear moment that the team understood what they were dealing with. He was no longer this ogre,
the bogeyman. Yeah.
Did he give you his verdict on the Dylan Times Are Changing?
He really enjoyed it. Yeah, he liked it. It was kind of the seal of approval, the only one required, really. He was again. He was always kind of quietly enthusiastic's not the right word. Encouraging about the music stuff. I did some solo slot on one of the Sky Cricket programs once, and I got a text message out of the blue from him saying great stuff. So yeah, there was put it this way, there was a lot of admiration from my side, but I think he was kind of reasonably fond of me too. So, which makes it even harder to cope with.
Well, clearly a very special member of the cricketing community. Thanks both. Rest in peace, Bob Willis.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.